do it a little bit differently, and I'm going to talk about meditation and also give instruction, mix it in, and then we'll practice together as we go along, and perhaps sit for a while at the end, and end with then we'll have Q&A discussion. So I'm going to go over our meditation instruction starting at the beginning. And where we start is with posture. And basically with formal practice. I mean, there are two kinds of practice. One is called meditation practice, and the other is sort of misnamed as post-meditation practice, as though it's after the meditation. But all that really means is that there's practice that we do in a formal way, sitting on a cushion or on a chair, where we sort of set aside a time and place for that. And then one can practice one's meditation throughout one's life. And in fact, that's really even more powerful if one can remember to do it than sitting on a cushion, although it's very helpful and important to sit down as well at a particular time and place. So I'm going to go through formal practice right now, the way it's done in the Buddhist tradition, especially our lineage is Tibetan, and so we kind of follow a format for meditation practice that's common to all the sects of Tibetan Buddhism. There are four main sects. And it's done pretty much the same way in all Buddhist countries, although with slight variations, and there's more of a difference in style than in substance. So the main purpose of posture, when one is doing one's formal practice, is to position your body in a manner that is relaxed, comfortable, and alert. There are basically two ways to do this, either sitting in a chair or sitting on a cushion. Both are fine, and it just really depends on how your body works and what works for you. I've sat on a cushion for many years, and now my body's kind of falling apart, and I tend to sit in a chair a lot as well. I go back and forth, and you really find your way. But the main thing is that you can do the posture correctly in either modality. If you're sitting on a cushion, the basic posture is to sit with your legs crossed, sort of American Indian style, just like that. Or there are other styles, like this gentleman is sitting in what's sometimes called the Zen novice posture, with your shins flat on the floor, and that's an excellent posture. And then, if you've been doing a lot of yoga and you're very, more supple, you might do half lotus posture. I think I might have met one person in my entire life, one Westerner, who was really fully capable of doing full lotus posture. And he was a very unusual guy. When I think of him, his religious name is Yamantaka. Yamantaka is a tantric figure whose name means conqueror of Yama, and Yama is the lord of death. So Yamantaka is quite a fierce carrier. This fellow could actually sit in full lotus posture for hours. It was amazing. So I really wouldn't like to see anybody trying it. It just indicates a kind of effort that's unnecessary. So sit with your legs however you like to dispose of them. One of the most important things about your legs is that ideally your knees should be no higher than your hips, and preferably a bit lower. And the reason for that is that if your knees are up too high, you feel like you're falling back, and you have to kind of pull yourself forward. It creates tension. But if your knees are lower than your hips, or at your hip level or lower, then it's easier to maintain an easy erect posture. And I can see everybody here is pretty much the same, except for one person who's such an experienced meditator that I don't dare to comment on her posture. So that's a basic guideline. The normal way we dispose of our hands is by simply resting them on our thighs. There's a name for this posture that I forget. Sometimes it's called warrior posture, meaning you're very alert like a samurai. But other times there's another name for it. And you can do other things. There's this posture, which is sometimes called the begging bowl or offering posture, where you place your left hand over your right and your thumbs are almost touching, and then you put that in your lap if you wish to do that. But we don't get too fancy about it because the main point is simplicity. And really what you're doing is working with your mind, and you're arranging your body in a way that allows you to work on your mind. So hands easily on the thighs, and you would like to have your back very straight. There's a slogan we say, hard back or strong back, soft front, or open heart sometimes. That your back is very firmly erect. If you were to drop a plumb line, a string with a weight on the end, through your coccyx, and through your fontanelle, it would come out your coccyx. Nice straight back. And then relaxed with that straight back, so that your breathing comes very naturally. Your face is relaxed. Just think about your face for a moment. And your eyes are open and directed down at the ground at about a 45-degree angle. Now, a lot of people say, well, shouldn't the eyes be closed? And in this tradition, we practice with our eyes open, because really what we're doing is we're cultivating mindfulness, both on the cushion and in daily life. And so by cultivating mindfulness and awareness with your eyes open on the cushion, you're getting more ready to take that kind of awareness and wakefulness out into the world in your daily life. So the eyes are open, the gaze is very natural. You're looking down at the ground at about a 45-degree angle. Sometimes when we look down at the ground, especially if it's a patterned floor like this, it might start swimming. Or you might begin to feel like you're having some kind of profound psychic, astral experience, but you're not. It's just a visual hallucination. And it'll pass. You don't pay much attention, you just let it go. Your lips are slightly parted, and your breath is coming through your nose in a very relaxed manner, and your breathing is completely natural and ordinary. You don't try to control your breath at all. So if you've just climbed a flight of stairs, you might be breathing rapidly. That's fine. If you have been sitting for a while, your breathing might become very shallow. That's fine. So everybody looks pretty good. Now, if you're sitting in a chair, the main instruction is to have your feet flat on the floor. And if you are not tall enough, some people are not, depending on the chair, then you want to put something under your feet so that your feet are flat. Otherwise, it's very similar to sitting on a cushion. The main thing is, and this is often difficult in a chair, is to have a straight back. Now, if you're sitting in one of these chairs, you'll need to use the back of the chair. But if you're going to sit in a chair long term, if that's going to be your style of meditation practice, then I recommend you go online and you can find a cushion that's wedge-shaped. It's about maybe 3 inches high at the wide end in the back and about 1 inch in the front. So it creates a wedge. And when you sit on this cushion in a chair, it tilts your pelvis forward very naturally, and then you don't have to use the back of the chair. You just can sit more erect. But when you're sitting in a normal chair like these folding chairs, you pretty much have to use the back. And again, the idea is just keep your back straight so that the energy in your body is flowing very easily up and down your spine and through your lungs. Your breathing is coming naturally. It doesn't feel constrained. Any questions or comments about posture at this point? Okay. This is sometimes called the warrior posture, especially when you sit cross-legged this way, because really what we're doing is kind of like the samurai ethic. We are just being here, very, very simply, with no agenda, and we're kind of immovably here, rooted, solid, present, awake. Then we work with the breath. And specifically, we're working with the out-breath. So here's what it feels like. You're sitting here, and your eyes are directed down at the ground. And in a very relaxed kind of awareness, you can be aware of this space that we're in, this room, including the sound of my voice, the sound of whatever is coming from the street, all the visual things that present themselves to you, whatever might be presenting themselves. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. It's whatever shows up. So it might be the floor, it might be the back of the person sitting in front of you. And as I mentioned, it might be bodily sensations, your bottom on the cushion or the chair bottom, your hands, wherever they're located, the feeling of your back. All these things, because I mentioned them, appear. It's like a presentation in a movie. And it's very, very simple. Your awareness is just here in the present, relaxed, open, really effortless. And then the breath comes up, it exits your nostrils, it goes out into the space, and it dissolves there. The idea is that you could feel the breath as it comes up, as it exits your nostrils and goes out, and then it dissolves in this space that we're here in the middle of, and there's just a gap. Nothing that you have to do. Sort of an end of your responsibilities, your effort. And then the breath comes up, it goes out, you can feel it going out of your nostrils, it dissolves, and you're just right here, wherever that may be. So the breath comes up, exits your nostrils, it goes out, and here you are. And the idea is that you can feel the breath. Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, be one with the breath. But if you're just feeling it without comment, that's it. It's you sort of become it. The breath comes up, you can feel it coming up and going out, dissolving, and then there's an end to your effort. And then the breath goes out again, exits your nostrils, dissolves, and here you are. So let's just do that for a few minutes. So the breath comes up, leaves your nostrils, you feel it, goes out into the space, dissolves, that's what it actually does, and your awareness is just right here in the room. The breath comes up, goes out, dissolves, and there's a gap in your effort. Before we go on, any comments or questions about the technique to this point? Yes.
Many years ago when I started meditating, I learned we're supposed to breathe out of our mouths.
You learned to breathe out of your mouth? Mm-hmm. That's fine. That's fine. In fact, there's a particular subset of the Tibetan Buddhist teachings. They're called the Great Perfection Teachings. And they teach this same technique, but working with breathing from the mouth. Yeah. So it's either way. It's okay. That's good. Yeah, and if you prefer, some people find they prefer breathing out of the mouth. And that's all right. Yes, sir.
Is there a particular quality of mind or purpose to this meditation that you're trying to develop some skill?
I'm going to.
Could you repeat the question?
The question is there a particular quality of mind that we're trying to develop or purpose to this meditation, a skill that we're working on? And I'd like to come to that as we go on, and we'll finish the sort of basic technique, and then we'll talk about what we're doing and why. That's a great question. Thank you. Have you been meditating for a while? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You look like you've been meditating for a while, your posture. Anybody else? Kristen?
What about blinking?
What about blinking?
I've always meditated with my eyes closed, so I wear contacts, and it was an adjustment. Sort of very conscious of having to blink.
Blinking. Doesn't matter. It's fine. We get conscious of these things, and they become very large, in our minds. But if you sit for a while with it, you'll forget about it, and then it will recede into the background, probably. Now, if you continue to have a problem, then we might talk about it. You might take your contacts out. There might be a problem with your contacts. I don't know. But probably what will happen is it's just like some people get visual hallucinations from looking at the floor, and after a while, you stop paying attention to it, and it recedes. Okay. What? You want a window open?
We have a volunteer.
Okay. Yeah, it's warm in here. That's the problem we have. We've tried the air conditioner during these talks, and then the talks are worthless, and the recordings are worthless.
What about just the fan?
Huh? It's the fan that is the problem.
We need a separate fan.
Huh?
A little one in the corner.
Oh, I don't know about that. Try it.
Good for you.
Okay. What do you think, Carrie? Carrie gives us a lot of approval, so he's the sound guy. Okay, so let's talk about thinking. You may have had a thought or two during that brief meditation, and that's fine. Contrary to some ideas about meditation, it's not a matter of getting rid of thought. If, in fact, you have that purpose, that will produce a lot more thoughts. You'll have a warfare, with your own mind. And it's just not the point. Thoughts arise and they pass away, just like the words that are coming out of my mouth. Basically, there are three kinds of thoughts. Big ones, medium-sized ones, and little ones. The big ones take you completely away, and after some period of time, you realize that you weren't in the room. You were having a fight with your mother in Oshkosh, or whatever you were doing, making love to your lover in Okefenokee, and suddenly you realize, I haven't been here. And at that point, you're no longer caught up in that thought. Now here's the instruction. And this is so important, because and you'll be working with this for a long time. The idea is not to judge yourself. The tendency we have is, especially with those big thoughts, we say, I'm a terrible meditator. The gong rang to start the meditation 30 minutes ago, and I've been out of the room for the entire 30 minutes. I'm hopeless. I'm a lousy meditator. That is another thought, and it's a very powerful thought, and you let it go. That kind of judgment is exactly what we're working with, giving up in meditation practice. Meditation practice is, among other things, the practice of learning how to be kind to yourself. It's called the development of Maitri, which is loving kindness. And it's a Sanskrit word that means loving kindness for oneself. And when one begins to practice this kind of tolerance for yourself, you also develop it for others. It extends out. And to the extent that you're intolerant with yourself, you'll find yourself probably, we all do, being intolerant with others. But this practice is so profound, this particular point. It cuts really to almost to the very bottom of meditation practice. Not to be judgmental about your thinking. Thoughts are a natural function of mind. It's like the ocean and waves. The mind is like the ocean, the waves are like thoughts. You can't have one without the other. As long as you're working with your mind in this practice, you will have thoughts. And the idea is simply, when you realize that you're thinking, you can say, thinking, just to sort of identify it, and then come back to the breath. Especially now we're talking about the big thoughts, the ones that take you completely away. The medium-sized thoughts take you away, but just for a minute or two. Like, what am I going to have for lunch? And then, oops, back to the breath. And with those, you can say thinking or not as you wish. You don't want it to get too clunky, too many thinkings going on. But you can do that. The little thoughts, you can have those thoughts while you're still aware of the breath. You're breathing in and out, the breath is going out, you're aware of that, and you're thinking, what's for lunch? It's like a bird going across the sky, and then it's gone. You don't even have to say thinking for those. You just let them go. So there are these three levels that you will experience. And the main thing is not to beat yourself up, not to be hard on yourself. This isn't a self-improvement exercise. This is an exercise in doing two things. Generating awareness, which includes awareness of your thoughts and emotions, and developing kindness. And kindness starts at home. Kindness for yourself. It's an incredibly profound thing to give up the idea of judging oneself. Really, the act of self-judgment is the biggest job of what in Buddhism we call ego. The ego, the false sense of self, which really tortures us and makes us suffer. So, when you're working with the thoughts, the idea is non-judgmental. As soon as you are aware that you've been lost in a big thought, let's say, you just say, thinking. You see it, and you come back to the breath. The more non-judgmental you are about it, the better. Not even the better. Let's get rid of the word better. That's the technique. And if it's a medium-sized thought, up to you. And if it's a small thought, you don't even say anything. You see it, it goes away, and you are still there with the breath. Any questions about this? Because we're going to try it for a minute now. Okay, then let's practice again. And we're going to give space to our thoughts without following them, without indulging them, but being aware. So our awareness is here in the room, present moment, very relaxed, effortless. And then we feel the breath come up, exit our nostrils, go out into the space, dissolve, and gap. And the breath comes up, exits our nostrils, goes out into the space, dissolves, and gap. So if you've been having a big thought, you just say thinking, and you come back to the breath, the feeling of it going out, dissolving in the space, gap, and you're right here. Okay, any comments or questions or complaints or whatever you'd like to say? No? Yes.
I have a practical question. What happens when you're sitting for a long time and maybe your foot starts to fall asleep or something?
That's nice, thank you. You're almost, are you shilling for me? So the question is, what happens when you've been sitting for a long time and your foot falls asleep or you have some pain? And the instruction is, it's up to you, but there's sort of two options. One is that you can sit with it for a while and see if your mind is just playing a trick on you. Sometimes you know it isn't, when your foot is fast asleep, that's pretty clear. But sometimes you might have experienced some pain and it goes away because your mind is sort of looking for some kind of entertainment. And then if you, absolutely, if you're in pain, move, adjust your posture. Because this is not an exercise in heroism, physical heroism. That just complicates the whole process and turns you into some kind of hero, and we're not doing that. So if you're sitting, move your legs. Another thing you can do is to sit with your legs drawn up. Can you demonstrate, Volker? With your arms around you. Yeah, like this. And the main, that's an excellent, you can meditate that way. You can do your practice that way. But the main instruction when you do that is not to do this. To bend over your knees. In New York, we call that the oy vey posture. And especially you still maintain a kind of erectness in your spine a little bit, comfortable, to sort of keep yourself alert. And then, after a while, when you're comfortable again, you can go back to crossing your legs or whatever you're doing. There are other ways to sit which you can experiment with too, such as you can use a meditation bench where you fold your legs underneath you. There are all different kinds of benches, and there are different cushions. Some people here are sitting on a square cushion. That's called a gamden. It's a Tibetan word. It means meditation seat. And if you're going to sit make a practice out of this, sitting on the floor, I recommend getting a zabuton, that's the big pad, and a cushion like a gamden, or those round cushions back there are Japanese-style meditation cushions. They're called zafus. And use some combination of them. And there are other things that you can use too to get your bottom up to the right height so that your knees at your hips are lower. Okay? Mike?
So, especially with the heat, it's easy to want to give into the lull of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, I've heard everything from go ahead, sleep, to just look at sleepiness as another thought. What are your thoughts on it?
All of that. We used to do these programs with my teacher was Trooper Rinpoche, where we'd go off for 3 months, and there'd be alternate periods of sitting and study. And during the sitting periods, we'd be sitting all day sometimes. And there's still people, we still have these practices. And the main instruction was, with regard to falling asleep, don't fall off your cushion. I actually saw a friend of mine, Jim Sakamoto, do that one day, just keeled completely over. But really, it's just a matter of working with it. It's like you can think of it as another thought. You can go to sleep and then come back refreshed. The main thing about it is you can't fight it, to some degree. When you're sleepy, you're sleepy. And not to beat yourself up about it. This is not an exercise in self-judgment. Again and again, you can't repeat that enough. Is to let that inner critic, that ambitious inner critic who's telling you that you need to do this perfectly in some way, let that voice go. That voice of self-judgment. If you could do that, your meditation will progress by leaps and bounds. It will become quite profound. That is so, yes.
There is one helpful
Okay, Michelle?
Thank you. There is one helpful thing about falling asleep, though, and that would be your gaze. So if you raise your gaze, that should help you stay alert. If your mind is sinking, raise your gaze to eye level. If your mind is wild, lots and lots of thoughts, lower your gaze and ground yourself. So these...
Oops, maybe we're running out of batteries. Thank you, that's excellent. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Raising and lowering your gaze affects your degree of wakefulness and the speed of your thoughts. It can be a help. Michelle?
There's one more thing, and that is about opening your chest. So normally when we feel drowsy, we kind of collapse. Do you know that?
Normally when we feel drowsy, we sort of tend to collapse. So if you work against that and open your heart, really, shoulders back, arms parallel with your torso, and really make an effort to breathe as well as raise your gaze, then those two things will help a lot. You want your spine to be as straight as possible without, with the little curve in the back here, just a little bit. Right? That will all help a little bit.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, let's practice for about another 5 minutes, and then I want to say some words about this practice. So relaxing your mind into the present moment. Be aware of the breath going out into the space. You can feel it as it goes out, feel the breath, and it dissolves. And the breath goes out into this space of the present moment, and it dissolves. Breath goes out, and it dissolves. Okay. So I'm going to say a few more words about this practice. Talk that I prepared. So the basic discipline always is simply to come back. We're constantly coming back. We can do this sitting on the cushion. You're off in a fantasy, and then you realize it, and you come back. You come back to the breath. The breath only happens in the present moment. So we're constantly coming back to the present. It happens when you're walking down the street, and you're going somewhere, Starbucks, and suddenly you realize that you passed Starbucks because you were lost in some daydream of some sort, some fantasy, and suddenly you're back, and then you turn around and go back to the Starbucks that you missed. So we're constantly doing this in our lives, and this is really the practice. This is what this is the core of meditation practice. It's constantly to come back. See, and what we're coming back to is not some artificial state. Really, we're coming back to what we are at core. This awareness right now, all of you are right here, you're listening to me, more or less. You're aware of the space of yourselves, your body, now that I mentioned it, all these things. It's effortless. When we go off into thought, then it involves usually some kind of anxiety, some feeling of wanting things to be different, or of wishing things had been different, or wishing that we could recreate the past. We're in the past or the future, and we're not quite here. And there's a nervous energy that animates that state of mind. And it can be quite fearful, actually. But when we come back to the present, it's relaxed, it's effortless, and it's fearless. That's the interesting thing. And so if you've got an anxiety, that's plaguing you, and you just notice what happens. That anxiety is strongest. It is strong when you're thinking about it. You're telling yourself a story about yourself and about what's going to happen to you and how you have to avoid this and try to do that, and but this could happen, and blah, blah, blah. And then you come back. You do your practice, perhaps. You sit down on a cushion. You attend to the breath, and it brings you back, and you can feel that anxiety unwind, relax. It's like a spring letting go and losing all its tension, and you come back to the present. So this practice is, among other things, it's the cultivation of fearlessness, of true courage. True courage. It also involves shifting your allegiance, and this is something that happens and is quite profound for all of us. It's shifting our allegiance from the dreams that inhabit our minds, the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, from that to our lives as they are unfolding now, this present moment. All the rest is thought, stories, very partial fictions. They're partially true, but because they're not entirely true, they're fiction. They're very partial selectings out of the past or of the future that we imagine. And we tell ourselves these stories just like a TV drama, that we might see, or a movie that we might go to. And then the movie ends. It's just like you come out of a movie theater and you're still seeing the movie for a while. It's like it's still playing in front of your eyes. And then it goes away. It just dissolves. And here you are, you're standing on the street in the middle of New York again, amidst all the bustle. And that is very vivid and alive, and you're back for your life. You've let go of the fiction. This is what meditation practice is, again and again. It's letting go of those dreams and coming back to the present. Now we say, yeah, but you gotta think about some things. I gotta think about paying the rent. Well, that's true, but not to the extent that we worry about it. That repetitive, anxious worry, that story we tell again and again. Isn't it suspicious? Isn't it fishy? The fact that we have to say it over and over again and relive that anxiety again and again and again. I keep quoting Freud. He said, repetition is the hallmark of neurosis. Volker's nodding. Yes. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with our neurotic mind. And we are identifying it. When we see that we have a thought, we're letting it go, and we're coming back to the present. And we're shifting our loyalties. Because when we first start all this endeavor, our loyalties are very much to the stories that we tell about ourselves. And eventually, we might begin to find that we have a different loyalty. A loyalty to our lives as they are unfolding in the present moment. And our lives include the past. I mean, you had to get in a taxi or a subway or whatever to get here. All that's included in your presence here tonight. But you don't have to think about it. It's automatic. And the fact that you're going to walk out the front door in a few minutes and we'll get some air, all of that, that's included in this present stuffy moment. But we don't have to obsess about it. If you're thinking over and over again, gosh, it's too stuffy in here, gosh, it's too stuffy in here, gosh, it's too stuffy in here, isn't something wrong? You only need to say that once to yourself. So what we're beginning to do is let that go and come back. There was a slogan at one of the, I told you about these programs that we did with my teacher every year for 13 years, 3 months long. And at one of them, there was a slogan that I always loved. In fact, they had T-shirts made up with this slogan. It said, "If you lose your mind, come back." And I see some nods of people who remember that slogan. And that really is the slogan of meditation practice, again and again, to come back. And when you come back, here's the thing. Be friends with all those thoughts. That doesn't mean you have to pursue them. But you can regard them as friends, That, oh yes, there's a thought again, okay. You don't have to kill it. And when you begin to do that, then they go much more easily, for one thing. But also, your sense of who you are is going to change in a very profound way. And this path is very profound. And that's meant to happen. And the key to it is this development of maitri, of compassion for yourself, of beginning to let go of the judgment, especially about your meditation practice. That you're going to get somewhere with it, that you're going to improve yourself, that you're not doing so well, that you had a good meditation, a bad meditation. There'll be meditations that you do where you're barely here. Where you're here when the gong goes off at the beginning, and then when the gong goes off at the end. And in between, you are somewhere else the whole time. Fine. It's like we are loyal to this practice. We are steadfast in this practice. We are going to keep coming back, however infrequently. And there'll be other times when you sit and you feel like you've been here the whole time. It was a terrific practice. Wow, I did really well today. Maybe I'm getting somewhere. Maybe I'm going to get enlightened. Maybe I'm going to become a terrific meditator. Until tomorrow, when you find out that you just spent, the whole time somewhere else again. So you just begin to develop this non-judgmental attitude towards your mind, towards your thoughts. Really, I think that's the most important thing that I want to say tonight. So, this practice, it's funny, there are people here who are just starting. And yet, the practice that we're talking about goes from the beginning to the end. In fact, it's not really a practice. It's your life. It's learning how to live a life, and live a life well, better. Not being ruled by our hopes and fears. Waking up from the dreams that animate us and rule us and enslave us. Waking up to a realer world, this world of the present moment. And we begin to see it stripped of our judgments. When we stop judging ourselves, we can begin to stop judging all the world out there as well. And so the two practices, or the two virtues, you might say, of this practice are the development of what is called prajna in Sanskrit. It's often translated as wisdom, or what it literally means is sort of super knowledge. It just means, really what it's talking about is clarity, complete clarity, being able to see the world stripped of our judgments about it, judgments of good and bad, which are so parochial, You know, it's so biased and so idiosyncratic to each one of us. They make us really sort of bigots and, you know, very narrow-minded, our little judgments. I know what's right, I know what's wrong. And we're all so different one from the next in those judgments. We could let them go. And we could see this world, as they say in the teachings, as it is, beyond preconception. And then the second thing that comes along with, and this is again straight out of these teachings, is the development of compassion. And what compassion means here is the ability to let the world arise and pass away as it is, instead of trying to constantly manipulate it according to some preconception, some idea that we were taught by our mother or father or who knows by our peers, you know, that some bias, and we're going to change the world according to that. We're going to make it safe for the Buddha. We're going to make it according to Christ. We're going to make it whatever. We've got the righteous word. We let that go. And we're beginning to develop some real appreciation and compassion for this world as it arises, and the ability to actually resonate with it, to empathize with it much more fully. And the reason we begin to be able to do that is because we're letting go of our judgments about ourselves and our judgments about others. And when we let those go, then we can begin to really feel what another person is about without laying our trip on them. So often, you know, we're looking at another person and we're thinking, they should be, they ought to be, you know, I know what's good for them. And instead, we could be opening our minds to them, feeling who they actually are and where they are, and helping them to live a more compassionate, loving, rich, kind life. We could be helping them in so many ways, helping them materially, helping them spiritually, helping them with our friendship. So it's really, when you say developing compassion, we might call it developing true friendship for the world out there, by letting go of judgment. So clear seeing and compassion, friendship. And it is ironic, we can do it sitting on the cushion, just watching our own minds. It begins at home. Let's see if I had anything else. I think that's plenty of it. Yeah, I wrote here, we discard the idea of having a perfect meditation. We just see it all and come back. That's the way you meditate. Just see it all, everything that's happening, and come back. You don't judge your meditation as good or bad. Don't judge your thoughts as good or bad. You just see them, acknowledge them, and return to the breath, to the present moment. And I wrote here, this is the practice at the beginning and at the end. There's one more thing, and I'll just mention this because we're not going to go into it tonight. But as you begin to develop this clarity and compassion, the world changes. Your understanding of who I am and who everything else out there is going to change pretty radically because we're beginning to give up that concretizing, that constant concretizing of the world, turning it into things that are good or bad. And that's a subject for a whole another night or more. But the Buddhist teachings, try to describe that world that we might discover, we might see beyond our preconceptions. Because in seeing it, we're pulled out of our preconceptions as well. But tonight we're just going to talk about how we work with our own minds. So, if you wish, we could have a bit more discussion. Any questions or comments?
I have the most wonderful thing on
Here, wait for the mic and tell us your name too, if you would.
I have to find this story.
saw a bumper sticker on a car once in Boulder I liked a lot. It said, "Now that I've given up hope, I feel so much better." It's a good one. I've never seen that before or since. You know.
Hope's a trap.
It sure is. Hope's a trap.
I was just going to say, I was hoping, I came away with thinking, gee, it would be nice if we talked about emptiness and rigpa tonight. And you tasted it, but another evening, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, we haven't gotten quite to emptiness, but this is certainly the way one practices rigpa. Coming back to the present and letting go of judgment. Yeah. That's
Perhaps, while we're waiting.
uh-huh. What's your name?
My name is Cliff. Something that it's kind of a razor's edge to walk, and we don't want to set particular goals or expectations that we have to meet when we meditate. But if we wander without direction, we usually don't get anywhere. And what I'm referring to is it's that fine edge of effort that you want to put in to do the practice, but not drift off into dullness and sleepiness. And the other thing is it's kind of a dialectic in that we don't want to scold ourselves, but we do want to aspire to putting effort and diligence into the meditation. So it's how do you find that edge?
Well, consider, if you will, what it is that keeps us from meditating. And really what it is that we're lost in our anxieties, our dreams, our anxious dreams. So we get up in the morning and, you've had a dream or whatever, and then it clears away. And then you start thinking, and you start thinking about your day. And maybe the first thing you do is get up and check your email. And you can get caught up in the forward momentum of all the things that you're concerned about in your life. And then it gets very hard to get your butt down onto the cushion, because the cushion, or the meditation seat, wherever you're sitting, is kind of like a timeout for all that. It's saying, I'm going to take a time out from those anxious thoughts about the past and the present, and come back to the past and the future, and come back into the present. That's what makes it so hard. So yes, it takes some effort to come back into the present moment, just like it does when you're thinking and you're having this, maybe a pleasant daydream, about whatever, making love to somebody. And then you suddenly realize, I've been thinking, and I need to come back to my breath. And it takes an effort to do that. You have to sort of say, okay, really, that's the effort. It's the effort of coming back. And when you come back, you're coming back out of all the dreams of self-improvement, too. You might be sitting there having this dream about how, boy, I'm going to get enlightened, and I'm going to use meditation practice to get rich. I'm going to open some meditation studios, and I'm going to have lots of people thinking I'm a great guru, and whatever the fantasy might be. And suddenly you realize that you've been fantasizing about that, and you let it go, and you just come back. It's hard. So that's where the effort is, I think. Yes, did you find it?
I did.
Oh, good.
This is the Daily Dharma.
You can hold the mic up to your mouth.
Press the bottom, but it's green.
Bottom button.
Just push the bottom.
Nope.
No, well, it's the Daily Dharma, a child's view of Buddha.
I'm sorry, what?
A child's view of Buddha. I think Buddha is light. In this light is a triangle of all colored light, and inside the light is a human, animal, sea, creature, bird, being. Is that
Thank you.
And a question.
Is working now. What do you think of someone just upon waking stuffs pillows behind them to sit up straight and meditates right in bed before they get out of bed?
Fine. No problem. Meditate wherever you can. Come back wherever you can, whether it's walking down the street, sitting in bed, getting yourself to a cushion. You know, I think that when we sit down on the cushion or in a chair and we ring the gong, you know, whatever it is that we do, maybe we have a little meditation shrine or an altar or whatever special place. What we're actually doing, there's nothing holy, you know, in the sense of being sacred, you know, about that in some pious way. Really what these things are reminders. They're aids to help us let go and come back. That's really what the gong is what the cushion is. It's harder when we're walking down the street because there's so many triggers. You know, you see somebody who reminds you of your mother, and off you go, you know, and whatever. Or somebody, your enemy, you know, they remind you of them and you get, you know, have a fight, or somebody you made love to is walking down the street, figuratively speaking. And, you know, especially in New York, there's so many triggers. And so it's harder. We used to write things, I used to write things on my hand, you know, to try and remind myself to come back. I went out once and I bought these round orange decals. You know, orange is the color of the Kagyu sect, of which my teacher was a member. And I bought these little orange dots at an office supply store, and I put them on the gear shift of my car, I put them on my telephone, on my coffee mug. The problem is, after a while, you stop seeing them. You know? So whatever works to get you to remember to come back, you know, this is really the practice. It's just so simple in a way, and it's so deep and so profound. I mean, I'm sorry, your name is Cliff. Cliff mentioned Rigpa. Rigpa is another word for, well, you might, it's another version of wisdom, you know, and it's terribly profound. But what we've been talking about tonight, the ability to see the world without labeling it, with an open mind, that's Rigpa. That's wisdom. You know? And it just gets deeper and deeper. The more we shift our loyalty to it, the more we are able to relax into it, the more it will take us over and transform us. It's like what you're doing is you're dissolving the habits of mind. I mean, most people, including me and you, are unaware to some degree of the extent of our repetitiveness and our habits. The more we meditate, we begin to realize, we begin to see it. And in fact, many people, when they start meditating, say, I'm getting worse. You know, I'm having more thoughts. You know, because they've actually started to notice it. Because they're so lost in their thoughts and their activities, you know, but meditation brings us back and allows us to see it. And actually then what starts to happen is those habits, those thoughts, if we practice, begin to dissolve, unwind by themselves. Really, all you have to do is you could treat it like a kind of hygiene, you know, like brushing your teeth. I'm going to practice. And you do the practice badly, well. There is no badly or well, you know. And you just do it. And you constantly keep coming back. Keep coming back. Well, we've gone on. I think this could be a shorter evening than often. Anybody want to say anything more? I'll tell you, I just came back from vacation, and I was reading a terrific book on meditation, which some of you may have read, by Pema, our dear Pema Chodron, and it's simply called How to Meditate.
What?
How to Meditate. And it is really terrific. I recommend it. usually we like to bow in and bow out, so I'm going to lead you in a little bow here. I regard it as kind of a way of waking up again. And I think we've got some watermelon, and we can turn on the air conditioner again. Okay.